You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Welcome to Minute To Skim It. It's me, Liam.
Shanice.
And if you've never been to our show before, welcome. And if you're coming back, also welcome. So the way that we do our show is that we do a review of number ones that are coming out for the week and give you our opinions on whether or not you should pick it up, if we found it interesting, and just our general thoughts, spoiler free. Yeah, that's essentially how the show works. It's fairly simple. We do it every Tuesday. So welcome in. Do you want to kick it off?
All right. Also, hello to people in the comments.
Yes.
Because I'm kicking it off with, since it's October, Night of the Living Dead.
2 weeks till Halloween.
Yeah, 2 weeks till Halloween. So I'm gonna hold this closer. It's actually a still from the film.
Nice.
Of course, like I feel like any horror fan, they've watched Night of the Living Dead at least minimum 5 times. Or really specific number, but like it's like I feel like it's just, even if you're not a big horror fan, you have to watch it just of how groundbreaking this movie was.
It started a whole genre of movies, yeah.
Right. And this issue, I really liked it. It's good for fans of that series. It's also good for people who may not be super familiar with it. The issue is essentially it's just adding a bit more backstory to characters in the film. So it's really fun seeing that. At the same time, it's also a little sad because you know what's going to happen to some of these characters. I really liked it. It made me just immediately want to just start watching the movie, which you can find pretty easily. You can even find on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
So I really dug it. I loved the art. I loved how gory it got. It's parts of the book. I would say a little bit more than the actual film, but there we go. For a movie that came out in the 60s, shocking at the time, still kind of shocking now.
Oh yeah.
I really dug it, and I loved. There was just like the afterward. You can tell that the creative team, they really loved this series, and they really do. They do right by Romero in this book.
Oh, nice.
Definitely do recommend this book.
Okay. Well then, just to kick off my side, Deadly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I grew up watching Spider-Man movies. I grew up with Sam Raimi. I know generally the comic history of all of it. And I've heard about this for probably like 2 months now, since it first got announced. And I was expecting like Venom-esque, and it's edgy, and that's it. There's nothing deadly about it. They make fun of Gen Z for like 3 pages, openly make fun of it, which I consider myself like a gray zone generation. I'm not quite millennial, I'm not quite Gen Z. I've grown up with both things.
So it's Zillennial? It's like that kind of like that awkward.
Yeah.
Where it's like I remember some in the 90s. Also remember the 2000s too.
Yeah.
So
like I remember like 90s Nickelodeon, but I also remember like when the iPhone was released, and I remember smartphones existing. Like I remember that weird like zone, and they go way too hard making fun of it, and I feel like that's really common with a lot of older Marvel writers, that they just go hard in making fun of Gen Z and like the younger, or not like the younger millennials. Like they go hard at making fun of them, and there's nothing deadly in this. It's just super edgy humor, and like they talk about how Venom was part of his life once, like at like one single page, and I feel like I could have done better for number 1. Like, there's nothing to tie me back and to continue reading it. I feel like I was being attacked and made fun of for, like, my interests. And I'm like, most of the people who come in for Spider-Man readers, especially in our store, and I'm assuming that you've seen it too, it's a lot of, like, younger millennials. I don't feel like reading this. That's what I took away from it. I mean, like, and that's what we're here for. It's differing opinions. Because I personally grew up like watching movies and like seeing like Outerline the comics, and a lot of the people who come into our store are about our age range, older Gen Z and younger millennial, and they're making fun of the demographic that are buying the books from our store.
Well, it kind of reminds me just because so obviously our producer so they read it one way, and Liam they read it another way. It kind of reminds me of like, just kind of. Still making it Spider-Man related with the Amazing Spider-Man film franchise. Yeah. It's like I feel like kind of like younger millennials and Gen Z kind of reacted to his Spider-Man differently from older Spider-Man fans. Oh
no, I'm just
there you
go. No, we're fine. I was just checking something.
So it's kind of like some people saw his Spider-Man to be he's just too cool to be a nerd. Yeah. It's like when I was in high school, these were kind of like how some of these nerds were. They were skateboarding. They weren't cool. They're still nerdy and kind of geeky. So I genuinely didn't see how people thought that he was too cool. Peter Parker was like, wait, what?
But like he's a pretty normal nerd,
right? So it's interesting because I actually do want to read it because Liam got something out of it. Producer got something else. So it's like, well, shoot, let me see.
I'm very interested to hear the reviews like later down the line of people reading it and like people coming in and buying it and like giving their opinions when they come back in. And then seeing just reviews online in general. I'm very curious to hear the differing opinions because obviously my opinion is not gold, it's not God. And like our producer said, he got a completely different opinion out of it. I personally have been seeing from Marvel lately that they have been attacking me and Shanice's age range. And like they've been throwing lingo that we don't even use out there. And like a lot of stuff that has been used to make fun of us online.
I also kind of feel like that's kind of a continuing thing. Like every generation, they've always got their hits. I'm sure Gen X got hit from my book.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So I think it's just something that just happens. That will continue to happen.
Oh yeah,
like 15 years, like Gen Z is like, how old is
this? yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's what I just took away from it, but.
So I actually do want to check it out. But see the next one.
Yeah.
Eve, Children of the Moon.
The concept of that sounds so cool.
Is this one? There's a little evil teddy bear. Well, not evil, but yeah. So I read it and I liked it, and I am 99% certain that it's a follow-up to a previous book. And this is one of the few times, was one of the few times where instead of like feeling like what is going on, it's actually pretty easy. It's actually pretty accessible as like a new reader. So it's like, oh well, this doesn't make me feel like what is going on. So it makes me want to go like, okay, what's going on? Definitely want to check out the previous series. Ends on a pretty interesting note where it's like, oh, I want to read issue 2 now, but I know I need to read the other book first.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't really go too much into it because I know I wouldn't really do this book. I can't give it I wouldn't do right by it by just saying, oh, it's about this, and that without zero context. But I really did like it. I really want to know more about this bear because the bear stole the show for me. But the main character, she's also very cool, and there's another character involving her where it's like, oh, this is interesting.
Nice.
I now have regrets about missing out on Eve. So if you've read the book, the original I guess Eve series, definitely do check this out. Also, if you're not familiar with it like myself, I definitely would recommend the Eve series to still read it because it's such a fun. I can't say fun, but it's such an interesting book, and the premise of it's real neato. So I think this is one of those books I think Liam maybe should have read because you've read it, and I really did want to read GCPD for a while, but recommend Eve as well.
Nice. I need to check that out. That was on my list to read, and I was like, interesting. I'll check that out this week then. So, Crypt of the Shadows. So as you can tell, it's October, so everyone's been releasing their horror stories. And that's this. It has I think it's 6 stories. Or 8 stories. They're all different characters, and it's all different stuff. Though I don't really like this. Sounds really weird. I'm not a huge fan of like cliches in horror. I say is my favorite horror movies are making fun of their own genre. But if you like the cliche, like the kitschy kind of horror stuff, it's absolutely this. Like they touch on vampires, werewolves, like everything that is classic like horror movie. It's in this. Granted, I didn't grow up with that. But the one bonus that I got out of this is so there's a narrator that's like ends the story and is like so moral kind of stuff. And at the end, each monster that's shown in the story is behind him. He's in the basement of Sanctum Sanctorum. And all those monsters slowly start building up behind him. And he slowly starts getting pushed against the glass that's in front of him. I loved that, honestly. I felt like if I got all of those and got them as like stained glass panels, I would absolutely put them up in my house. But I thought they were really cool. If you like the horror stuff that's been coming out for October, like the classic kind of stuff, pick it up, absolutely. I'm just not a huge fan of the horror, and I don't know what I expected when I grabbed this book. But that's all I can say about that. I can't really say much without spoiling each story. There is a really good Moon Knight story that ties in werewolves that I thought it was interesting, and the first story talks about vampires. So yeah, I can't say much without spoiling all of the stories.
So I guess like I'm not sure if you read like any of like the 70s like Marvel horror or like the older DC horror comics that we have plenty of here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you read them or not, but if you have, how would you compare it? How would you compare Crypt of Shadows to it? Would you say that it's a fun throwback, it does its own thing, or you can tell that it's like the Werewolf by Night TV series that came out?
Yeah.
That's like it's a fun homage to the Universal Hammer horror type.
I haven't read them. I'm aware of them. I'm aware of like some of the plot lines, and it definitely takes homage from them. Absolutely. Like one of the stories is literally called Werewolf by Moon Knight. Yeah, that was hilarious. I was like, neat. But they absolutely take homage from those old horror comics. But I didn't grow up reading them, which is also the problem. And I haven't had a chance to read them. The ones we have, I have such a long list. I have like 100 books on my read list. It absolutely takes homage from those old horror comics that came out for years. And absolutely just takes homage from like the Universal horror scene. They're good. I just didn't grow up with the Universal horror kind of stuff in the horror comics. Didn't grow up in the comic scene in general, to be fair. But if you grew up in that genre, pick it up. Absolutely. I'm just one person. I can't say much. I'm one person who's new to comics. So yeah, pick it up if you enjoy the horror scene and the horror comic scene that's been around for years, decades. Grab it if you're aware of those genres. You'll absolutely love it if you do.
Right. So kind of segueing from that to Fear of Funhouse from Archie Comics. So as you can tell, it's got very much a oh my gosh, whoever is watching this, kind of help me out. I am blanking on the name of this show. It came out in the 90s. The group is called the Midnight Society.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Oh, I can't remember what it is now. They had like an episode with a swimming pool. Oh, hold on.
So
continue with your review while I look this up.
As you can tell, and I am so embarrassed as I guess as a millennial for blanking on the name of that show. But yeah, so it's the Riverdale kids. They're trading off spooky stories, and the issue is
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Thank you. So it's a fun riff on that, but with an Archie twist. But even I feel like in the last 10 years, with an Archie twist, that means nothing because their horror, I will die on this hill. They've had some of the best horror I've read I've read on the stands.
It messes with my head a little bit.
And they
it's good.
So the stories are still all ages, but they still have that "Are you afraid of the dark?" and good goosebumps, and to an extent like the Fear Street books if you read them.
Yeah.
Like you can still they're still all ages for people who are under 18, but they're still very, very chilling and dark. And kudos to everybody who worked on this book, because the last story was just like, oh boy, okay, let me see who put the story out, because it's not so much that it's like a violent, bloody, gory horror book, but it's genuinely chilling once you realize like what's going on. You're just like, oh,
it just messes with your head
a little bit. And I feel like had this story come out from Marvel, DC, Image, or IDW or whatever, people would be talking about it. It's like, yeah, this is actually really good. But it really does bum me out that Archie, I mean, I think it's kind of moving beyond that, but from this or whatever, but like when they do horror, they do it right. But I feel like people don't really give Archie horror a chance, because
I feel like people write it off like really quickly because it's Archie,
right? Because they think it's like, oh, it's just Archie, Betty Veronica, it's just really cheesy. Like,
Archie
no, it's
scary stuff, dude.
Right. So, and that's why I really do recommend this book that people check out. Like, don't let the Archie horror trick you. Like, it legitimately is a horror book. And again, I'm not trying to make it seem like, oh, it's super, super scary, but I would definitely recommend it, and I really hope people don't overlook it because it's an Archie horror.
Yeah. Well then, Harley Quinn, Legion of Bats. So it's following along, like it makes references back to the show, which I'm a season behind. I haven't completely finished season 3, so they make references that I am very out of the loop on.
Ooh, yeah.
No, otherwise I understood all the references. Like they make if you haven't seen the show, I can't say much without spoiling it. It's a fantastic show. It's hilarious. I recommend watching it. It's super funny. And they normalize Harley and Ivy's relationship and normalize bisexuality in that universe. It's amazing. I will warn, content warning, there is an implied scene where Harley and Ivy get intimate. But otherwise, I thought it was hilarious. And you don't even have to be caught up on the show to understand what's going on. There's like one section, like one single panel that references an episode from season 3. And they even reference how season 4 is currently being animated. They have like tons of references back to the show, which I thought was entertaining and super funny. It's a great, like the animated comic series. I feel like it's hilarious. And absolutely, it does it justice towards the show. It feels like I'm reading an entire episode, if I'm being honest. Like, it's hilarious. They put Frank in as a panel, like a single panel shot of Ivy and Frank having conversation. Frank is a plant that Ivy owns.
For context.
Context. Ivy has a plant that she talks to that's essentially like her Jiminy Cricket. He's hilarious. I love him. He's a Venus flytrap. He's essentially like Audrey in Little Shop of Horrors. It's, if you've been watching the show, legitimately pick this up, and there's references to the last season, the first season. Like they mention, like, one of the plot points is a side B plot with Bane in season 1, with Bane's name being misspelled on a cup on purpose, and they bring it in so well. It was just so out of nowhere, and I was like, this is a really old reference, and I like how they brought it back. It's a really good book, though. I recommend picking it up even if you're not watching the show. You won't be lost if you're not even caught up or watching it. It's hilarious. It's funny. It's not even just typical Harley story. It's just funny, and like ignoring all that. It's a hilarious book. Pick it up, please. It's so funny.
Right. Next we're gonna go with Postmasters.
The pitch for this sounded amazing.
Yeah. And so Postmasters, I'm sure you know.
They make a reference to that.
So Postmasters, as you can tell by the title, it hails with the Postal Service. Easily like one of more like just like BA mailman I've ever seen in pop culture. But yeah, so just I guess for context, world is not the world that the world is just gone sideways after a pandemic. What happens, right?
Wow, crazy.
They're super topical, so first things will go like super south. So this dude, as you can tell, he's wearing a mask. It's very important. Don't want to spoil why.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's basically a courier, like goes back and forth delivering mail because like in this world can't really like do what we used to do, like hug, interact with each other. Like it's very hard. I think people are very distant from each other, and mail is just the one last form of communication where it's if you've ever gotten like a handwritten letter, like it really is. There is really is a difference between that and just getting like an email or whatever.
It's a lot more meaningful.
More intimate.
Handmade letters were a thing,
and that's why it's just so important in this world. So of course, with his job, there are not so great things with the job. So you're constantly like on edge, like you're that people who are out to hurt you and all that jazz. So all that being said, I really like this book. This was the first book I've read from this creative team, and I think I was just the last person here at the store who's never read anything like from these two, Gunn and Blanche. So I'm really happy. This was the first book of theirs that I read, and I really am interested in checking out issue 2 because of how this one ends. The violence in it, it's interesting because it happens so quick, and it's not just like it's just violence for the sake of being violent. It's just like, whoa, holy crap, this person means business. And it has one of the cooler character introductions I've seen in a while. And I also really love this character, this person's whole look, their outfit, and the design. It's super great. I really liked it, and the main character is really cool, and I hope nothing bad happens to them because it's like, oh, you look so awesome, man. And there is something that happens at the end where the character recites like basically what happens when you mess with one of these postmasters, and it's just super like, oh, you are in trouble. But yeah, I really liked it. I went into this completely blind. I didn't know what this was even about. I just picked it up. I was like, oh, cover looks cool.
I need to read it now because the concept on Previous World sounded really interesting. I read Pandemic and I was like, I need to read this.
Right, and I totally do get it too. It's like if people are a little bit hesitant on reading things about the pandemic and things like that, and I totally get it. That's why I couldn't watch a certain Amazon show that kind of deals with this kind of thing. Yeah. So I totally do understand people were kind of like on it, but this I would definitely recommend it because it plays a big part, but it's not like constantly just like being repetitive. Where it's like, hey, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It tells you from the jump what's happening, and you see how it's obviously affecting this world.
Yeah, that's neat to know.
Oh, very nice. Yes.
Nice. I'm very happy for that because just discussion of it. What's up? Is my bag over there? You brought your bag in? Oh, I'll take that as a no. Sorry, Jenna just suddenly made an appearance. But the synopsis on Previous World sounded really interesting. I need to watch Postman. That's just a side thing. It's a movie that follows a postman who's trying to like deliver a single letter in the middle of a post-apocalypse like state where there's only like 3 postmen left in the whole world, and this one single letter needs to be delivered. It's the last in the mail before the apocalypse. It's not a funny movie. It's really depressing, but it makes me want to watch it again. Anyways, moving on to Hellboy, a movie that I haven't seen in a long time that I need to. Hellboy in Love. It's super cute. It's gonna be a mini series. It's only gonna have 5 issues, and it's cute for a Hellboy story. That's all I'll say. Like it's very obviously like a Hellboy tale. Like it's clearly like it's obviously. And I've never read any Hellboy. I grew up watching the movie. I'm aware of like the Hellboy universe in the comics. Like I've grown up with that industry surrounding my life. My dad read the comics when in the 90s, when he was living in Michigan. So like he may be aware of the comic series. So it's adorable. You can absolutely see the relationship building between Hellboy and the main plot device. That like is the very beginning of the storyline. And you can absolutely see that it's going to be like a super cute, like meet cute, or not really. It's not a meet cute. I mean, she's getting robbed. It's just a really nice, like, it's refreshing to see this in the Hellboy universe of like he being a real person and him actually like falling for someone and not just being a dude from hell. Like it's just really refreshing to see like Hellboy treated like a person. You never really see that anymore, which is a shame. You only see him as like essentially like merc, in a way. And it's just cute. It's just a really cute story. That's all I'll say. Like, it just follows him and the obvious love interest, like slowly like building a relationship together, and her seeing him more than just a weird monster living on Earth. She sees him as a person, which is very refreshing for him, and he is like, yes, I do have feelings. Thank you for acknowledging that. Nobody ever does. It's adorable. If you like Hellboy as a character and you want to see him treated like a normal person, pick it up because I thought it was adorable. I really liked it. I'm gonna keep reading the series if I'm being honest.
Okay. And my last book of the day is Miracleman the Silver Age, and it is number 1, and it's, from my understanding, it's just continuing a unfinished story from Neil Gaiman and Mr. Buckingham. So so my knowledge of Miracleman, it's pretty limited to from what I read about and from Mora's run. So, and I'm really happy that they were so kind to do a quick refresher. It's like, hey, so if you haven't read it in a while or you're not familiar at all, here's what's going on right now. Nice. So, when I did the review last time for issue 0, which was kind of a celebration of this character, I was very happy that they had this because I was like, what's going on? Yeah. So I think out of all the books I read this week, this was probably the most bittersweet, and it's also the issue that filled me with the most dread. Because you just know something is going to go things are going to go sideways, which is to be expected if Hopping this character and another character on this book, on this cover. So, the only thing I can really tell you is, like, if you're familiar with Miracleman, or if you know who Miracleman is in the first place, definitely would recommend it. If you're not too familiar with it, and you might just be getting into it because of the creative team, there's nothing wrong with that, but be prepared to have a lot of references, even with that recap at the very beginning, still just kind of being like, what? Time to go to Wikipedia page or TV tropes or whatever. And again, I'm not saying that in a way to like shame people. It's just like, hey, this is a character that, I mean, for a lot of people may not be familiar with. This might be, you may have, the first time people may have heard about this character was when Marvel, and the whole legal issues that was going on a couple years back, or for all I know might possibly be going on. Who was like, wait, who's Miracleman? But wait, Alan Moore worked on this? Oh, wait, what? Yeah, so
I didn't know that.
This is like before Gaiman. I really liked it. My heart broke for one of the Miracleman related characters, and all I could think about was like, man, I really hope this doesn't go the way that of another Miracleman character. I'm trying to say as vague as possible. I know for people who don't know who this person is, it's like, what is she talking about? But I really like this one. I'm honestly torn because I really liked every single book I read this week, but these two might have been my my just two favorites,
wow.
and it's great because they both made me feel like uneasy for both just for two different ways. Just the last story and this one was just super uneasy because like, oh man, this is actually happening right now. Not even this could totally happen to somebody, but this is happening to people who I know.
Yeah.
And this is one that's just made me just feel like you're watching like a train wreck, like a slow motion, like you know what's happening when it
like
does
you already
happen.
know when it's gonna happen, but you're just waiting to see it actually
For the actual
happen.
collision, yes.
Yeah. Oh.
And you don't want to look away, but your eyes are just glued to the story.
Oh, that's rough.
So I might be just like over when people read it, it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. But it's like, yeah, it's like you just kind of want to give this character a hug. And it really is funny because I guess I can say this. So this is someone who's been in a coma for like 40 years.
Oh wow.
So when he wakes up in the 2000s,
that's unfortunate.
He's just like, oh wow, certain people have rights now. Okay, cool. Like,
people have the right to vote.
Well, not that extreme, but it's just like, oh, what is she wearing? But it really is like an interesting book. I really do recommend people checking it out. But just have Wikipedia on hand.
Yeah.
I guess that's all I can really say.
Well, on the flip side of that, GCPD, the Blue Wall, radically different than Miracleman. I am broadly assuming. So they have a warning on the first panel that it does discuss race issues, and I was like, police brutality, and it is there is no shown of police brutality, but there is implications of it. It's oh wow, it is rough. They talk about like very real issues that happen within the police force, not just towards minority races, but towards just in general. Like it doesn't matter the skin tone of the cop, there is going to be corruption within the police force.
Especially in Gotham, which I feel
yeah. And they do make a reference back towards, so there's a new commissioner. She's making a speech at the beginning. And they make a reference how in one of the previous Gotham City like storylines that she was wanting to move to New York and not even stay in Gotham. And
in what universe is New York City safer?
The DC universe.
Would have a killer.
It's actually it is legitimately safer in the DC universe to be in New York than it is to be in Gotham.
Okay, true that. All right, I'm
yeah.
I was gonna say
in the real world, it's safer too.
What was that?
In the real world, it's safer too. Because compare New York to Chicago.
Fair, yeah.
Like, I've been mugged in Chicago. I've never been mugged in New York. Just saying.
Yeah, I've heard more people get mugged out here in like Texas than be mugged in New York. It's nuts. I've heard more people get mugged here in Houston than getting mugged in New York. Like, I've met people who've gotten mugged in Buffalo. Anyways, if you are very sensitive to the discussions of racial relations between the police and discussions of potential police brutality and having guns when it being pulled when it should be non-lethal is absolutely talked about in this. If you are sensitive to that, I don't recommend picking this up or honestly continuing with the series. Because this series will absolutely be talking about police brutality and race relations between the police. It will be talking about real world events and real things that do happen in our own universe, not just in comics, but in the real world, and stuff that has been getting discussed in the news. If you are very sensitive to those topics, I will recommend for you to skip this series altogether. They do discuss the reincarceration rates of people who have been released from prison and the high reality of reincarceration within a year. Like I said, if you are sensitive to those topics, I don't recommend picking up the series because it will be discussed thoroughly in this series from what it looks like. it's a great discussion of the topic, and it needs to be talked about more. And the transparency, I feel like, especially in DC, is, according to Jenna, it's been talked about since the 90s. And I enjoyed it for that reason. Sounds super stupid. Obviously my jam is blank.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I guess so. GCPD Blue Wall, because when it was first announced, I was curious about it because the book is one of my favorite DC books, and that's the standard I'll kind of hold it to, which might be unfair, but it's like, so this book came out in the early 2000s called Gotham Central. So I'm curious to see how this book handles it compared to that book, because that book, and this came out again in the early 2000s, and I feel this isn't like the first time where law enforcement in the DC universe where they discuss, you know, police brutality and just other things of that nature, because you could also make the argument that came up. And the more you guys see me on this show, I will always reference this run because it's one of my all-time favorite runs, but this O'Neill's Question book, which is also touched on that. Granted, it's not in Gotham Central, but it's in Hub City. And again, maybe even argue earlier than that, maybe in books that came out in the 70s, again, O'Neill and Adams. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is, like, I'm curious because, again, the way Gotham Central did it, it didn't have it didn't always have like a, you know, super happy ending. You had police officers who were genuinely trying to do the right thing, but then you had other ones who were just, it was a very systemic issue, and they whenever what they did, it was just like, oh well, we can't really fire this person for whatever reason.
They're always
and you see that the internal affairs, they're trying to do the right thing, but again in universe, even like the good police officers are like, okay, they're just kind of being annoying, just kind of like prying things that you shouldn't be prying into. But I do still want to check it out because I feel like
you'd love it,
right? Because I do, you know, like because I'm assuming that's her name, Montoya.
Yes.
Okay, so I should look at comments, but like so I do definitely want to check it out because it's like, and I think I'll fairly compare it to like Gotham Central. I was like, well, this isn't Gotham Central. I'll just go back to read Gotham Central. But which I do recommend people read that book as well, because I think they had a reprint of an omnibus for it this year. Which, you know, it's an omnibus, so I know people may go like, it's expensive, but like it's worth that book's absolutely worth it.
Omnibuses are better than singles, if I'm being honest.
The next time Jenna comes, she runs in here, which she might. She will vouch for that. I made her and another coworker of ours read Gotham Central, and I was actually totally nice about it, but I was like, read the book, so please. So quick Gotham Central plug there. I'm actually checking it out.
It's like I said, just trigger warning there, just throwing that out there. I enjoyed it, and like when I was a senior, most of my friends were Black, and I was one of the very few white kids that was in my friend group. And I saw a cop, and I was like, hey, just a warning, we gotta be like careful because we might all get arrested. And one of them was like, nah, and I was like, no, I'm being serious. Like, this isn't funny. Like, this is a real topic. And I thought it was really well done in this. So yeah. Ending on a serious note, not meaning to, but I thought it was a great book. It was just great. That's all I can say, honestly. Well, any final notes?
So all good number ones this week.
Oh yeah.
Of course we had, you know, like the horror books. We also had like the apparently really sweet gushy book. Starring Hellboy of all characters. But
I know, I was surprised too.
But as always, guys, definitely check out your local comic stores in your area.
And please don't yell at us. We're doing our best with shipping issues. I say this every week. Every store has different shipping issues. Every state has different shipping issues right now. And just please don't yell at us. Oh, actually, would you look at that, Jenna?
Perfect. So, can you
We're talking about Gotham Central.
Actually brought you up. So when I had you in Bean read Gotham Central, was I forceful about it, or I was like, hey, read Gotham Central?
You guys need to read this.
Yeah, we were like, okay.
Okay, Shanice.
I literally ordered
the first 3 volumes just based off of what Shanae said,
For real?
and then reading the first issue.
Yeah.
It was that good.
Wow.
Bullying kind of.
Well, what are you
Bully
into
with
reading?
love. Bully with
Love.
love. That's
My-
okay. Miss Jen
so-
bullies me with love and onions.
I was wow. I was a customer.
That's why I was
So
writing.
a little bit background on me. I was a customer before I started working here.
Oh my gosh. So on that note,
Okay.
right, check on Jenna if she's okay.
Good.
Oh.
Okay. I was a customer before I started working here, and Jenna borderline bullied me into. She almost bullied me into reading Bloodshot. This is like my origin story with meeting her. Is she recommended me I Hate Fairyland, and she almost bullied me into reading Bloodshot, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna read this now, but I will absolutely read I Hate Fairyland. Thank you for the recommendation. This is also around the time that she first started working here too, so she was very go get her. We love Jenna. Don't get us wrong, we love Jenna. She is amazing. But on that note, please don't yell at us if we don't have the book that you're looking for, and we're doing our best. Okay, we're trying our best, but if we don't get in the book if your store doesn't have the book that you're looking for, we're trying. We can only do so much.
And even if we don't have the book, because
Yeah.
we can always order it, but there's
Yeah.
also so many good books out there already that you
Yeah.
may have missed from last week. And like-
some companies don't even do second prints. So
But still, I was just gonna say too, even always swing by on New
Yeah.
Book Day, chat with your local comic store employee, someone who works Wednesdays. It's great. I love talking to people about comics and spreading the gospel about Batman Forever. So so this is our books
yeah.
for the week, and be sure to stick around for awesome stuff.
Yeah. See you later.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is